Hi, I'm Alistair McIntyre for Electric Scotland, and today I'm wanting to read you a paper. It's really about whether Scotland as an independent country should be a member of the EU, or whether in fact we should instead be a member of EFTA and the EEA. So this paper is basically going to try to give you some facts, and I would certainly encourage you to do any background research yourself to see in fact if what I'm saying is correct. So let me read you this paper, and I hope you'll find it of interest. A year ago, if someone had asked me if an independent Scotland should retain membership of the EU after independence, I would have said yes, of course we should. I did, after all, run the website of Ian Hudson, who is the Scottish member of the European Parliament for some 5 years. However, I was made aware of the paper produced by Dr. James Wilkie on Scotland and Europe. Having read that paper, I'm now totally convinced that retaining membership of the EU is the very worst thing we can do as an independent Scotland. The facts he produced are just that, facts. Any competent researcher can verify these from other sources. You can Google James Wilkie on my Electric Scotland website to learn more about him, and frankly, his credentials are amazing. His paper essentially says that Scotland should not be a member of the EU, but instead should become a member of EFTA and the EEA. That not only would be better for Scotland and the Scots, but it would retain our full independence rather than give a good chunk of it away to Brussels. After all, why divest ourselves of Westminster control, where we currently represent 10% of the population, then give it away to Brussels, where we'd only represent 1% of the population? It should also be borne in mind that the EU only represents half of Europe, whereas the EEA represents all of Europe. Now let me provide some facts from Dr. James Wilkie's paper. The European Economic Area, that's the EEA, comprises members of both the European Free Trade Association, that's EFTA, and the European Union, the EU. Much misinformation is currently being spread about the relationship between the EU members and the EFTA members. This misinformation is being spread by many who believe that membership of the EU, which among other things would include a pledge to adopt the euro currency, would be beneficial for independent Scotland. Articles 99 and 100 of the EEA's founding agreement require that EFTA members of the EEA have exactly the same rights as EU members. All the EFTA members are represented individually on the EEA's governing bodies, including the EE Court of Justice. But EU members are represented collectively by the EU Commission. The same applies to the all-important top table of the World Trade Organization, where EFTA members have their individual voices, whereas EU members have only one voice, that of the EU Commission. Thus, Scotland would be independent in EFTA, but not in the EU. Under the EEA agreement, especially Articles 99 to 101, the EFTA members have exactly the same rights as the EU side of the EEA. That really disposes once and for all of the mythology that the EFTA states have no say in the formulation of EU legislation. But there is more to it than that. All the EFTA members of the EEA are represented individually on its governing bodies, including the EEA Joint Committee, the EEA Council, the EEA Court of Justice, etc. But its EU members are represented collectively by the EU Commission. The EU Common Fisheries Policy, that's the CFP, alone is costing Scotland considerably more than $1.5 billion in lost revenue creation every year. The EU has destroyed tens of thousands of jobs throughout the CFP, the Common Fisheries Policy, and the incompetence of the EU's management of the CFP continues to this day. Under the Lisbon Treaty, the EU controls all marine biological resources, that is to say, from whales and basking sharks down to the last frond of seaweed in Scotland's exclusive economic zone seas. All national waters, right up to the beaches, come under exclusive EU fisheries competence and is now regulated under EU law and not Scots law. Since the Lisbon Treaty also transfers powers over energy to Brussels, fishing is obviously only the thin edge of the wedge that will eventually see all marine resources coming under Brussels control. So much for Scotland's oil, folks. Do Scots really want that? Scotland's share of the UK's annual EU dues was £845 million in 2010, up from £532 million in earlier years, because of Scotland's proportion of the IMF and direct aid to the Eurozone. £845 million is more than £162 for every man, woman and child in Scotland, and that's after all EU grants have been accounted for. That cost will rise every year. The EU takes Scotland's money, deducts its own huge overheads, and returns only a minute portion of the remainder to Scotland in so-called grants, which are only a tiny fraction of our own money being returned. I mean, do Scots want this to continue? As an EFTA EEA member, Scotland will be liable for a contribution of about £200 million to the EEA Solidarity Fund for weaker EEA member states. It is not a contribution to the general EU funds. The EFTA EEA contribution is less than a quarter of that EU amount. So how many Scottish jobs could be created with the difference? Is a seriously good question to ask. A move to the EFTA side of the EEA from Scotland's present part membership of the EU side would cause no disruption whatsoever to Scotland's economic links with Europe, which would continue unchanged. No action would be required to leave the EU side of the EEA, since Scotland as such has never been an EU member. It only needs to refrain from applying to join. Independent Scotland would be foolish to join the profound, undemocratic EU. Scotland should conduct its business as a member of the European Free Trade Association and of the European Economic Area, as Norway and Switzerland have done, and thus retain our full independence rather than give a good chunk of it away to the EU. And there we go, folks. That's the case for not joining the EU and for joining EFTA and the EEA. I certainly hope you'll take the time and trouble to learn a bit more about this. Again, if you go to my website, electricscotland.com, and go to electricscotland.com/independence, in there you will find a whole collection of papers which will give you the facts, and you can do more reading in there. Hope this is informative, and I hope it helps you to make up your mind about EU membership.